Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Repair or Replace Your Pool Room Dehumidifier webinar presented by Dehumidifier Corporation of America. My name is Harry, and I do the marketing for DCA. Today we have Jim Metzger, Vice President of Sales, and Graham Gelhaar, Director of Manufacturing, and they're going to be talking about some of the major warning signs that your dehumidifier is failing, whether you should repair or replace your unit, and how to set up a strong maintenance plan. Now, before we get started, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the question bar. And at the end, we're going to go through as many questions as we can. And if we run out of time, we'll reach out to you directly with an answer. This webinar will also be recorded for offline viewing, and we'll send out an email with the link to the offline view in a couple of days. But with that said, I think we're ready to start, Jim.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Metzger, and I am Vice President of Sales at Dehumidifier Corporation of America. Thank you all for joining us today, and I'm excited to speak with you, and we can talk about pool room dehumidification. Before we get started, let's just talk about why a pool room dehumidification system is needed. It's very elementary, and I'm sure most of you know why, but let's just go over it again. Anytime you heat a body of water up, like a pool or a hot tub, of course, it evaporates into the space. The air can only hold so much moisture before it becomes saturated, and at that point it starts condensing on any cold or cool surfaces. And of course, if you're not controlling the humidity, it just goes downhill from there. This moisture can penetrate walls, get to the cold side of insulation, form moisture and actually water in the walls, forming mold and mildew, and by the time you see it on the inside, it's pretty much a teardown at that point. So today, we want to cover some of the major points for maintaining and replacing dehumidification units to make sure your system is performing at its best. The major keys here include understanding and recognizing common issues and the problems that can arise if these issues go unaddressed, effectively determining whether to repair or replace a unit, and creating an effective maintenance and monitoring plan to extend the life of your unit. Understanding each of these points is critical to make sure you don't experience serious problems with your unit and your pool room. The last thing anybody needs is to shut down the entire space to repair not only the unit, but likely other areas of the room that would be negatively affected as well. Dehumidifier Corporation of America is dedicated to providing the highest quality of service in all applications associated with the specialized field of dehumidification systems, including hotel, motel, residential, and therapy pool rooms, and anywhere that a specific dew point is critical. To start out, let's discuss a few of the major warning signs that may arise that should let you know you already have a problem or one is about to start. If you're using a worn or damaged dehumidifier, you're leaving your company open to some of the following major issues, which include: sometimes it's a little tricky to know whether the dehumidifier is actually operating correctly or not, only because if you're not familiar with what it sounds like when it's running, oftentimes the blower is always running, you're delivering air through the room, but the compressor is off. And when the compressor is off, of course, it's not doing any dehumidifying. So some of the early signs might be oppressive high humidity levels in the pool room, which is more than normal that you've experienced. And many times you're going to hear complaints from swimmers as to poor air quality, causing their eyes to water and skin irritation. These are normally keys that there is a problem. Now, if you're in a cold climate in the wintertime, you're going to see a lot of moisture building up on windows and any condensable metal surface. This is certainly another way to know that the system is not operating correctly. We talked about formation of mold and mildew anywhere in the pool room structure, and in any place that you see it it's going to be a problem. But it normally happens on cold surfaces, and it normally happens in walls, and that's the most destructive type of mold and mildew there is, because it normally means it's not repairable, it's got to be replaced. Another thing to look at is corrosion on metal surfaces in pool room and mechanical rooms. If the room has a suspended ceiling with metal grids, you're liable to see some pitting or moisture or rusting forming on these grids. That again tells you that the relative humidity is higher than you would like to see it in a room. If we're talking about a mechanical room and you're storing pool chemicals in the mechanical room, you're going to see rust and corrosion on any metal surface. That includes the conduit, that includes the pool dehumidifier, the pool room, the water system, the heater, the pool water heater, even the room heat. Anytime you see rusting build up there, you have a problem. Many times it's caused by storage of chemicals in the mechanical room, which we really do not like to see. These should be stored in another room in an airtight container that's ventilated adequately. Increased maintenance downtime is another sure issue. If you are having problems keeping it running and having a servicer in there more than once or twice a year for downtime problems, this normally indicates that, one, there might be a leak in the refrigerant system, or two, the unit is starting to near the end of its effective make-up life. We at DCA are been able to establish ourselves as a leader in both new and replacement models over the years. We regularly replace dehumidification systems from all of our top competitors, who at this time are Ceresco, Poolpack, Dectron, Desert Air, Dry Air, and others. There's also another type of way to control pool room humidity, and that is with makeup air systems. And there is no dehumidifier involved there. Basically, it's very simple. They draw outdoor makeup air into the room, which either needs to be cooled or heated before it can enter the room, because we normally like to run the pool room air temperature 2 to 4 degrees above the water temperature. That same air is drawn across the room, across the pool. It picks up moisture and it's sent out through an exhaust fan. In some parts of the country, you'll see a lot of these systems. In other parts of the country, you won't see many at all. We can also replace dehumidification systems for dehumidifier companies that are now out of business, no matter how many years. And there have been many, many that have come and gone in the last 40 years. If you do not see your dehumidifier shown on our list, a few pictures of the identification plate on the dehumidifier will provide a good start in determining replacement. In fact, we've taken the time to create a list of reference guides and tools to help our customers ID when and how to best replace a unit. You can download these guides later on by navigating to our resource library on our website. In the meantime, it's important to understand the signs and early major considerations to look for to know when it is time to replace or repair your dehumidifier. Some of these include experiencing more than 1 or 2 service calls per year. And by these, I mean over and above the normal service that's required, and that would be maintaining the return air filters and adjusting the tension on the belt, and that should be done twice a year, along with at least once a year, checking all the electrical connections to make sure they're all tight. The second giveaway might be the dehumidifier runs continuously or on very short cycles. If it's running continuously, that normally indicates there's low refrigerant and it just can't quite keep up with controlling the relative humidity in the room, and the controls are always calling for the dehumidifier to run. Or if it's on very short cycles, could mean that the dehumidifier is going off on high head pressure, which is an indication of a lack of airflow, or the coils, the refrigeration coils are starting to degrade to the point where they're not doing their job effectively. Either one of these are telling you something is wrong. The unit fails to reach required humidity and temperature control set points. It's and again, you're gonna hear from swimmers, and you're gonna see moisture built up on the wall. And normally, another way you might want to check this is to have a hygrometer in the room measuring pool room or measuring relative humidity. This will tell you if your controls are adequate, or if they're set at the right point or functioning properly. Excessive moisture is visible on exposed glass or metal surfaces. Normally in the very, very cold climates where the temperature is below 0 outdoors, you can expect some moisture forming on the glass. The moisture buildup point is about 65 degrees, and of course keeping glass in very cold climates at 65 degrees is very hard to do. But when you see it on metal surfaces, that's another giveaway that the humidity moisture is building up. We talked about poor air quality. and resulting from persistent mold and mildew buildup, and this leads to its own odor and own smell, and at that point you really have to take some action because things are happening in a hurry. Additionally, the major questions to ask when you decide whether to repair or replace the unit include: who sized the original dehumidifier originally? Were they the same group that provided the system that didn't meet expectations? This may reveal that it's time to find another partner. Sometimes when pool rooms are put together, the engineer and the architect are familiar with pool rooms, and they'll use a water temperature that might not be appropriate. A lot of times they'll use a water temperature below 80 degrees, which really is not a temperature that you're going to see all that often. Normal water temperatures range between 80 and 90 degrees. 80 degrees on a commercial level with a pool, a hotel or motel pool, and a therapy pool will be up, in the 90s. A lot of residential pools run from 85 to 90. And just as a point of reference, the moisture evaporation rate almost doubles between 80 and 90 degree water temperature. Another thing, did they supply an oversized unit to fulfill other project needs, such as pool water heating or additional cooling requirements? Dehumidifiers can do many things. Of course, the primary function is to control the relative humidity. When at the same time they're adding pool room heat to heat the space, and of course in the cold climates this is all very welcome. Now many times pool rooms, if pool water dehumidifiers also have the pool water heating feature which assists in pool water heating. Many times it's not needed. We look at small pools, residential pools under 500 or 600 square feet, as this is a feature that really is not needed, and certainly in small hotel or motel pools as well. Because even though your system has pool water heating assist, you still need a primary pool water heating heater. So it's a redundant system at that point. Is the person that sourced the original system still in business? Have you examined the criteria used to select the original system, such as the change in pool water temperature and the pool temperature itself? Again, it's another time before you're thinking about replacing, to take a look at and evaluate exactly for your conditions, exactly if the system that's in there now is the right system to do the job. With maintenance employee turnover being common, it is often important to reveal how and why you ended up with your current unit before another one is selected. Another question to ask yourself is, does the present system make use of the proper outdoor air code requirement? All commercial pools require a certain amount of outdoor air to enter the room, and there's normally an exhaust fan to relieve that pressure. And many times this source of outdoor air is shut off, especially in very cold climates. But it's an effective part of pool room dehumidification, and we certainly recommend that you keep this open. And finally, have you considered what features you may desire that your original system didn't have or wasn't available at the time? Some of the early units did not have remote condensers, and of course the remote condenser is the cooling component for the whole system. So basically the dehumidifier is going to dehumidify, but all the time it's going to be adding heat to the pool room, which of course has its limits, and certainly in the summertime and early fall you're not going to want to run the dehumidifier. So a remote condenser can be the solution for that. Just about every hotel and motel have remote condensers as part of their systems. Controls have changed a lot over the years, and sensors, and you may want to take a look at, you may have snap action controls now, which are very simple controls, to something a little more appropriate, with sensors being in the pool room and the controls themselves being in a mechanical room where people walking by the controls can't just arbitrarily change the number because they think it's either too warm or too cold in the room. Those are some of the things to consider there. One other thing to ask yourself is did this unit meet expectations from day one? Are we happy with it? And only you're going to know that, so it's just something to ask yourself. When it comes time to selecting the proper unit, consider required water and room temperatures, which is very, very important. Like I said before, we want to run the room air temperature 2 to 4 degrees above water temperature. Humidity levels, somewhere between 50 and 60%, probably 55 to 60% being very common. Available power and water options, as well as refrigerants, moisture removal capacity, outdoor air code requirements, cooling needs, unit weights, and others. Also, equally as important is the location of the system in terms of suitable ductwork and system serviceability. If you're faced now with a dehumidifier that's awfully hard to service just because of the way it was installed, now is a good time to rectify that. Maybe at that time there was no such thing as a vertical dehumidifier, which there are now, which lends itself to ductwork changes. DCA engineers have identified the best replacements for many of our competitors' product offerings. To best meet your specific needs, DCA offers the largest range of capacities from 1.5 tons to 12 nominal tons compared to our competitors. We almost have a model for every ton. So we can meet your exacting needs with our systems from 1.5 to 12 tons. We encourage you to submit your information or to use our new replacement unit identifier tool for immediate feedback and access to our full product and service brochure, which is on our website again. At this time, I'd like to pass along another member, Graham Gelhaar, who will have some more information.
Thanks, Jim. Hello, everyone. Jim has given you a lot of the reasons why you are looking at changing out a dehumidification system. And he's also pointed out a lot of the reasons, or a lot of the things that you need to look at when changing out a dehumidification system. What I'm going to touch base on right now is just some of the things after they've changed out the dehumidification system and things that will happen after that, so you have a good installation after that happens. An important part of caring for your dehumidification system is to create an effective maintenance plan. You can do this by simply establishing a maintenance schedule to include the changing of air filters, checking tension and replacing the belts, tightening all the electrical connections. You can see the owner's manual for a list of these and a lot more. Many times it makes good economic sense to make use of service contracts offered by qualified HVAC installers and service contractors, assuring that you are receiving the best performance and life expectancy of your dehumidification system. Another consideration to keep in mind is the storage of corrosive pool water chemicals outside the dehumidifier mechanical room. Jim has touched base on that already, but they should be kept in a well-ventilated utility room, or sometimes they place them in a cabinet outdoors. One of the things to keeping your unit running also is to make sure that all the diffusers, return and supply are unobstructed. Our DCA specialists with the experience in pool room dehumidification dating back to the mid-1960s are here to work with you throughout the entire process. Don't wait, and be sure to contact one of our experts today. At this time, please feel free to send in any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, so as Graham had mentioned before, any questions that you guys have, feel free to add them into the questions bar. Before we get into the first question, for anybody who joined a little bit late, this is recorded, so you'll receive an offline link to view this after the webinar is completed. The first question we have is, we are currently replacing a dehumidifier at a hotel and the customer was never happy with the way the original unit was working. What should we do first?
Harry, this is a great question, and one that we see just about every time it's time to replace the dehumidifier. And this is a great time to address the problem. Was the right unit put on the job to begin with? With that, we have a load information sheet on our website that asks all the appropriate questions, and that being the surface area of the water, the hot tub, the volume of the room, the duct system, the amount of glass that we're going to experience, obviously where the unit is located, what part of the country makes a difference. If it's a commercial application, the amount of outdoor makeup air, and any of these questions that are asked for on that sheet. This is a great time to determine if the one you have is the right one. If it isn't, now we can make the change. We also have additional options at this time. We talked about them before. If you don't have the cooling component, such as the remote condenser, this is a great time to add it. You'll find you'll use that pool room a lot more when the pool room air temperature is always comfortable. Also, if the way you're heating the pool room right now, if it's electrically back then and now you have maybe natural gas available, putting a gas duct heater in certainly is going to save a lot of dollars in energy costs. It's a much more effective way to heat a pool room. If you are have a large pool area, let's say over 1,000 square feet, we can also add pool water heating assist. And if you're in a cold climate or a warm climate, this makes sense if the pool is large enough. Also, it's a good time to look at the installation. The equation is really a 50-50 equation. Selection of the correct unit is 50%, and certainly the installation is the other 50%. The installation we cannot control, but it is spelled out clearly in our installation and service manual about accepted ductwork, where to put the unit, where the diffusers, the warm air diffusers are located. We certainly, if we have a choice, we want to direct all warm air from the dehumidifier, the dehumidified air, blowing right on any outside facing glass. Not near it, not nearby, but right on it. The better job we can do to keep that glass warm, we're keeping it above dew point temperature, and the formation of moisture is going to be limited by doing that. The return air should be taken probably from the highest load in the room, and maybe in several places. The highest load is going to be near the hot tub. That's a hot tub about, a 500 or 600 square foot hot tub will put out more moisture than the pool will. So we'd like to pull the moisture right off of the top of the hot tub and maybe in another area in the room. Those two things should be looked at. I hope that answers that question.
Great, yeah. Our next question is, what would be an acceptable range for airflow velocity for the supply air ducts when using existing ductwork?
This is Graham speaking. And basically, your air design around a pool room, you should be focusing the majority of your air on the windows, not anywhere else, but mainly on the windows. And what you want to look at is about 5 CFM per square foot of glass. And so you can calculate to your size of your windows, and that'll give you what CFM you want to see on your windows. Now, velocity is going to be determined how far you need to throw that air down to the bottom of the window. So that's you could see a broad range of velocities, but if you keep that 5 CFM per square foot of glass, your contractors can design the right diffuser for you to come up with that. There's nothing really that difficult about that.
Great. Our next question is, what are the causes of a dehumidifier failure in a long or short term?
Generally, Jim touched on that already, and bad installations are probably the #1 thing. You're going to find they didn't either put the right refrigerant charge in, or the ductwork is just poorly designed to the point where it's impinging all the air and you can't get anything through the unit. You're going to slug your condensers. You're going to start putting a lot of dirt if your filters, if they're not changing the filters, you're going to clog up your condensers, and that's going to create a problem. Maintenance is a big problem. You're going to find in the motel, hotel, YMCAs, and any other installation in the commercial field that maintenance people are changed very often, and then nobody really understands what they're doing. And that's one of the reasons DCA, we have our phone number there on all our brochures, so any of those people can call in and we can tell them that we can help them. But usually by the time they call us, it's a little late.
Great. Next question we have is, what are the most common installation problems that you come across?
As Jim said before, the biggest ones are duct design are a major problem. Power supply can also be a problem. You have to make sure you have the proper voltage and phase for where you are. And another big problem is unit charge. If they don't put the refrigerant charge that's required in the remote condensers, they're going to have all kinds of problems with that. The other one is sometimes we run into long line sets. When you start getting out past 100 feet, it gets a little more difficult. You're adding more refrigerant. There's more chance of slugging compressors. So you try to keep that at a minimum.
I could add to that a little bit, just about talking about the remote condenser, the outdoor remote condenser, certainly has to be sized for your ambient. In other words, a condenser in Houston, Texas is certainly going to be size larger than in Hibbing, Minnesota, for instance. Temperatures vary greatly there. Also, when a remote condenser is installed, many times they're installed near other remote condensers, or there's a roof over the top of them. Where I'm going with this is that we're not getting clean air through the condenser. We're getting recirculated warm air from either that remote condenser or other remote condensers, which certainly compromises the effectiveness of the condenser. And that all drives head pressures up on the hottest days, and the system will go off on high head pressure. So if you're experiencing that, you want to check on that remote condenser just to see where it's located and if it's located near hot air or it's got adequate circulating air around it. Another thing to check too is the cleanliness of the coil outdoors. Not that it's taken a lot of fuzz from the trees and leaves and debris, and it's unimaginable the amount of debris that gets in a remote condenser, because normally the fan draws through the coils and discharges on the top of the unit. Another thing you want to look at is the amount, Graham talked about the line sets and how many 90-degree elbows and the length of these line sets. It's amazing how adding way too many 90-degree elbows impedes the flow of the refrigerant. And also, you also might want to check the elevation separation between the remote condenser and the dehumidifier. If it's lifting up 15 or 20 feet, that's a problem unless it's been addressed in the installation of the line sets. So if you're having problems with the cooling side of it in the summer with the remote condenser, those can be some of the problems.
Great. Well, that looks like that was all the questions that we had. Jim, any final words?
Obviously, the dehumidifier, the full dehumidifier is probably the key component of all HVAC in any pool room. And certainly the amount of moisture that evaporates into the space has got to be taken very seriously, because you will cause mold and mildew problems quickly, and you will then repair that. Many times it's a tear down, and then you'll add a dehumidification system after that. So let's do it right the first time. If there's a problem, if there's any suspect that the unit's too small or too big, let us run the loads to make sure that the new system is going to be exactly what you need to take care of the problems.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Once again, this is recorded, and you'll be receiving an email in a couple days with a link to the offline version. Any questions that you guys have that are lingering, feel free to reach out to the team. We'll email you with a response.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you very much.